listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again today. Man, just like any other day, we have an amazing show lined up with y'all with our special guest today. We have our special guest today, Kristof Morrow. He is a Navy veteran, and he also is the author of Second Son, The Second Son. You can get it right now. It's available on Amazon. And first and foremost, man, I just want to say it's going to be awesome to talk to Kristof, because he has not just a pretty awesome story, but he's also an award-winning journalist doing great things. So, man, Kristof, thank you for your time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. It was very kind of you.
Yes, sir, man. I mean, we're not playing. You're not playing. You went viral on TikTok. You sold more than 1,000+ copies of your book, the debut book, The Second Son. Let's first learn a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your military, experience and how you got into writing books.
Well, my military career, I joined right out of high school, and I went straight to boot camp, after graduating. And I went to boot camp, then I went to corps school to be a corpsman, which is a medic. And then I went to my first duty station in Jacksonville, Florida, Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, Florida. Which is a kind of a lovely place. And then I had my first what I would come to know as a tic attack, which is similar to a seizure, except you're conscious for it. And it manifests in different ways in different people, but for me, it did so like a seizure. And so with that quality to my health, I was no longer eligible to be deployed. So I was medically audibly discharged a year and almost a year and a half in or something, a year and four months or something. And then but the way I got into writing, I actually was 13 years old and a teacher. We were given the task of writing a letter to the soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I thought it was a very solemn thing. So I wrote, I gave my greatest effort, very sincere effort, to write something that I felt was profound, at least, and true, most especially. Because of the virtues of liberty, that sort of thing, right? Yeah. I don't know why, but it felt like music, and it was sort of an awakening. I gave the letter. I didn't think anything of it, but I gave the letter to my teacher, and about a few hours later during lunch, I was swarmed by a bunch of kids, and they said, "Oh, your letter was so beautiful." And the teacher's been reading it to every class, and she told me she wanted to publish it in the newspaper. It was the whole thing. But then I didn't start writing until I got into the Navy, and I needed a kind of an outlet because it was a lot of pressure, Mm-hmm. So I just sort of started writing short stories, and I won some awards doing that, and at a couple of community colleges I went to, and then I got into journalism. I auditioned for a job as a journalist, and I got that work I started in sports and agriculture, and moved to news a few weeks later. My editor told me to write a feature about a guy, and I had never written a feature before. I didn't know what that was. I had to Google it, and then I looked up a feature written by a writer, a journalist that I respected. I studied his format. And then I won an award for that article, and then I won an award for photography for a photo I took during Hurricane Harvey from the Texas Press Association. So I've just had very successes. And then when I was 32, my Tourette's is sort of peaked in its intensity, and they told me that in terms of work, I couldn't work anywhere, because I was a liability, because I injure myself a lot. Yeah. And so I started writing my book, and that's what I do.
Man, mean, what a story, because, I mean, yeah, you brushed by the awards you got, and that in itself is impressive. I believe I read in your bio that you won, you applying for higher education, and you won the highest award for short fiction and poetry in 2 different colleges. I mean, man, you just got to sweep some of those successes around the world, man. You've been doing some good things, man.
It feels, it's the most honest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
Because I don't know any other way to do it. It's, you follow the music, right? You just jump into it and you let it take you.
In writing, you said in the beginning, at a young age, you had a passion for it. Was it that you were reading also books that kind of piqued your interest, or was it just the art in itself, or just writing and expressing yourself?
Yeah, that's a good instinct. Yeah, what you just asked. Yes, of course. You say like, was it a writer? You know what I think? I think that a lot of what holds back writers, I think, that can be of any worth is that they don't. If you don't study enough different subjects, and you can create connections, like very learned connections between different things and different subjects to understand, like, for example, how did the economy affect, the behavior of a rebellion in this, what I'm saying? Like all this stuff, like you can't, if once you begin to understand how everything is connected, these things become much more compelling to you. And then, and you can describe, when you can articulate what you really truly feel, it inspires you yourself more than, more than what it does. So my work inspires me. I try to write work that inspires me. And yeah, so.
And being a award-winning journalist, I mean, how does writing fiction and being a professional journalist, what's the difference between those different styles of writing?
I actually think there's a lot more crossover depending on the genre you work in. But I work in, I write epic fantasy that aims to be literature, right? And so Hemingway and Charles Dickens, I mean, I know so many writers, because I taught myself to write. So did Charles Dickens, and so did Hemingway. They actually learned and became journalists and taught themselves to get the job. And then they, they learned that the trade. Now, the thing is, as a journalist, there's a lot of structure. So you have to begin, you get to begin an article, with the lead, right? You say, like, basically summarize the whole thing in one sentence, the first sentence. And you also are compelled to be lean, right? And because you can't be superfluous always. And you also have to be exact. Brevity is paramount, especially, and you have to adhere to like a language that is universal. It reminds me of like speeches by Bobby Kennedy are an incredible example of what I'm talking about.
And you also says in bio that you had a chance to work on a movie and being able to write, with a filmmaker. What was that process like for you to be able to work with a film director in Louisiana, I believe?
Okay, well, it was interesting. It was a learning experience. I had to grow up a lot, like just as a person, I think. But also, I was a script doctor. So what that is for anyone that doesn't know, the director had already written a script and he had discussed it with me, and I said, and I didn't realize what was going on, like what his position was as a director or anything like that, or who if he was famous or anything. I didn't know anything about him. I just knew that he was there to accept an award, an alumni award. And so, I told him, like, nah, I don't like that. I told him stuff. I just argued. I told him what I thought he could do better. And he said, all right, well, I'll send it to you. And then I rewrote the script, overnight. I spent the whole night working on it. I had food poisoning, actually. But I still did it. And, I showed up the next morning to the reading with the producers and everything with him. And I had rewritten the whole thing, and I gave it to him, and I changed the ending. I think everyone changed so much. And and it was for me, live theater is amazing. I can't really do it these days because I have Tourette's, and I'd love to go to live theater, but I just can't. But it is to see people. I wrote a scene, and I wrote the setting, the context, and the conversation, everything about it. And there's just like dozens of people involved in making that a living thing, and that was so amazing to me. I'd never. It was really beautiful. I don't know.
Having those different experiences, I mean, do you say that they all someday you will want to continue, as far as if you ever were able to work on another film project and continue being a journalist and writing fiction? Will you do all three, or would you try to focus more so on some other area?
I think my talent is in writing source material. So, as a writer of epic fantasy, you're like I said earlier, you're compelled to be kind of lean, but you also you were able to offer depth in a way that's so specific. There's no interpretation. There is interpretation, but the interpretation is very rigid in many ways. It's discernible. You can be extrapolated, by the same way by a large number of people. And so I just think it's, I don't know. Yeah.
When you kind of talk about the book that you wrote, The Second Son, volumes 1 and 2, tell the audience a little bit, what is the premise of the book and what it's all about?
So the premise of the book, the main character's name is Moo, because I love cows. And I thought it would be funny if it became a work of literature that professors would have to say Moo.
Right.
I just thought it would be funny. Anyway, but it's a literal paradise that Moo lives in, and the people, it's supposed to be an allegory for boomers or people that are in their retirement age now, living in a kind of financial paradise while the rest of us live in a sort of Game of Thrones type cutthroat world. And they're insulated by owning property, by having retirement savings, so they're able to be lean in places and able to generate money in other ways, properties and rentals or whatever the hell. And so the book is meant to, similar to Game of Thrones in structure, in that in the first, if you've seen Game of Thrones or read the book, the first chapter is about Ned Stark. The second one's about Tyrion, I think, Lannister. The third one is about Daenerys, I think, Targaryen. Well, mine is similar in that it starts in the first chapter is one part of the world with characters. The second is a different part. Third is a different again. And it's supposed to be in terms of it describes entirely like what the world is sort of going through. And in many ways, there's a lot of allusions to real life, like the war in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and like that. So, and like other places, right? So, it's just a different. Like it's just supposed to. It's supposed to, but I wanted to. I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't do justice to the notion, like to the issues of racism and sexism. So, and I felt like I wanted to do something similar to Tolkien, because I think the Game of Thrones is excellent, right? But it's just it can be kind of a lot. It can be kind of much, right? And I wanted to do something between Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, like split the difference, right? In terms of violence, in terms of but there's no, everyone can, you feel as though anyone is capable of succeeding and doing something extraordinary, in similar to Tolkien. So that's what I wanted.
And you got to tell a story. What caused you and inspired you to go to Vancouver, to leave Texas, to end up going there?
Oh, well, like I said, I was a reporter in Texas, right? And it's just, I could kind of see, I know my own people, right? Mm-hmm. I had some pretty, I don't know, what you guys do if you talk about politics on this thing, but it was not a fun situation. I was a 911 dispatcher, and I got literally a first. It was ugly. It was ugly. The things that I saw and the things that I heard, like, it just it did not inspire hope in me for the state of our union. And I felt after the 2016 election, I wanted to go to Canada, also because my Tourette's seemed to be in a way that I wouldn't be able to maybe maintain without some kind of medical intervention. And I was right. So my ex and I moved to Canada. She's a Canadian citizen also. She's a dual citizen. And I got permanent residency, and now I'm here.
Did you find that the opportunity to move there, was that a new chapter in your life where it was like, okay, I can kind of settle in what I wanted to settle into and keep writing? What was it, the game plan for you once you made that move? Oh, man.
I've always wanted to live in Vancouver because I've always, and for precisely the reason why I learned yesterday, I went with a friend. She took me to the beach, and I saw exactly what I wanted to see, which was like a Jurassic Park type situation. The foliage is incredible. Like, there's so much. It's rich. Louisiana is very similar, but it's hot, and it's just really dangerous. It's like Australia. If you like took a little bit of Australia and just like dumped it into the United States, you would get Louisiana. Just a little, and it's kind of insane because it's so hot and mosquitoes. And anyway, so they don't have that here though in Vancouver. And they have seals, which are adorable. I actually saw one for the first time yesterday. It's beautiful. It's beautiful here. I love mountains and the ocean. It's beautiful.
And when it comes to your work, you've got your work out there. You're a published author. What has been the feedback from your friends, family, readers? What have you been hearing from people based on your fiction novels?
Well, it's going to sound outrageous, but I'll just say it. What I get most is they compare my work to classic literature. They say that they haven't. Many people have told me they haven't seen a work of like epic fantasy like this since Lord of the Rings. Many people have told me that they don't like they've never seen a kind of depth. You don't see this kind of depth in epic fantasy before. I actually care about the characters like I do in To Kill a Mockingbird. I remember someone said that. It's just there's so many extraordinary things that so all the feedback has been very, very, very encouraging. Yeah, I feel somewhat vindicated in having spent thousands of hours doing it.
Yeah, that's a lot of time. When you are marketing yourself, what's your, I mean, I'm sure it's crazy. It's no, cookie cutter science to it, but how did you approach marketing yourself online when it comes to sharing your work and just marketing your books?
See, the thing is, I think that people are looking for authenticity these days, right? And the way that you do that, the way you generate that impression is to truly sort of disclose, you have honest suffering or honest joy. I mean, these things are, for example, the way that you establish a relationship with an invisible person, just like you would as a writer. You're talking to a specific audience. It's almost like you're just imagine yourself at fireside, and you're trying to, explain something old and legend. You know what I mean? And something anyway. So I said I started discussing only my Tourette's, really, and what it's like to live with Tourette's, because then when I say that this is my work that I've done, it's like, wait, this guy who is dealing with all that has written a book. Wow. Right. Okay. And so
a good book. on top of that.
That also, that did a great deal to help. And so you basically, so people need to know that like they're not being sold to. So for example, I don't make cuts in my videos, right? I do there's no cuts in it. And I don't know if there's any science supporting what I'm saying right now in terms of its impression, but for me, it works. So I don't do any cuts. I only do a couple of takes. So if there's mistakes, if there's pauses, I mean, that's just me. This is a human tics, right? Those are human tics. Those are in conversation, which lend credibility to it, right? So, it's about like anything else. You have to be honest with yourself first before you can be honest with your audience. Period. That's period. So, if you actually enjoy something, then really celebrate that and show that you enjoy it, right? Because it really does create a connection with you, because they say, wow, there's something so human about our love for other people. It's so flawed in the way that it can be generated so easily, right? Without any effort. It's so easy, but it's also so hard to generate sometimes, right? And that's what makes it so funny, so human. And I love that about it. So you try to do that in a positive way. Really, it's about separating. Yeah, it's really about separating yourself from the noise and saying, like in a conversational way, like the way you're doing it, like the way you do your stuff. Obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I saw the TikTok stuff. I'm like, man, one of the videos got 300,000+ views. I'm like, well, good God, man, dang, that's impressive. Because it's hard to go viral these days. Everybody's doing it. Yeah, and the way the way that it ended up happening, but in the end was that after I talked about Tourette's for a while, I started to talk about my book, and then someone that has become very dear to me, a woman named Sandra. She's like my young aunt. That's what she wants me to call her. She's very lovely. She read my book, and she's a total stranger at this point. And she fell in love with it, she said, and she made a video about that, about how much she enjoyed it. Wow. 2 people, as a consequence, the next day bought the book, and I made a video about that the next day. And then that video ended up encouraging people to buy it. And so at the same time, though, I had made the book. It was my free weekend. So I could make the book for free for that. So I could actually generate some traffic. Mm-hmm. So like I made the video that said, oh, I sold 2 books because of that other video. People, they sympathize with that because they know what it's like. And then the next morning, I saw that my ranking, because it was free also, because I had sold some books actually, like a couple hundred, I think. I don't know what it was. Anyway, the point is, the next morning, I made a video about how I was a new ranking. I was like number 243, I think, on Amazon in the epic fantasy category. That's a big deal.
That video went viral.
Yeah, it's hard to get 2 sales.
and then the next one also went viral. It has almost 300,000 views, but it's private now because I think it's old. But yeah,
that's impressive, man. Because like I said, it's hard to get 1 sale or 2 sales if it's not your family, you know. So it's a big deal to be able to put yourself out there. Once again, I'm talking to our guest today, Kristof Morrow. You can follow him on TikTok, Instagram, and also on Amazon. You can get the book that we've been talking about today. Is real. It's available. It's real easy to remember. The Second Son and volumes 1 and 2. When you talk about what you had to deal with a disability. I don't even say it's a disability. I think it's It
is, yeah. Oh, it's definitely a disability.
No. What I mean is like paraphrasing, like it enabled you to be yourself, and you didn't allow it to stop you. Is what I was trying to say.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're right.
And I feel like sometimes, because I can't speak for everybody, everyone's different, every situation is different, but some disabilities, I think, is sometimes our superpower, because without it, we wouldn't be our authentic self, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I frankly, I'm a white guy, right? So like I have a lot of I get the benefit, of when I walk into a room, no one really assumes anything about me. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing. I'm just a blank slate in every room that I walk into, which is an incredible benefit.
Yeah.
And so like there's a great deal of suffering that you can be completely oblivious to, that you don't even realize you're imparting, because you think the thing that you just said, you're the only one that says that thing, but they probably they might hear that thing like 30 times a day, and so this is one of those things that I deal with now that I know, because I have Tourette's. People think, for example, when I say, oh, I have tics, that was a tic, they go, oh, don't worry about it, it doesn't bother me. And I was like, no, I'm not worried about bothering you. I'm just telling you so that you don't think I'm crazy. Like, I had nothing to do. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So so as a person now with a disability that is very visible, and can be humiliating. Because I say things like I hate myself, and I call myself names that I can't say here, and if I, without having a tic, I guess. And it's just there's so many there's just so many qualities to my day that changed in the way that and to the way that I had to interact with people, and it depreciated a lot of my prejudices against that I had for myself. Like I realized. Also, how vulnerable we are, because like I didn't have Tourette's and then just one day I did.
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about it. And so and then one day it's just, and then you find out that you have something that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And
I love how you put that, because like I said, no one can walk in your shoes except for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, no one would know. I mean, we can try to be like, oh man, you won't, save it. And how many times do you find yourself having to educate people, like you are right now on the show, so that way people can come across more genuine and not just assume, that they know the answers?
Yeah. That's what you just said is the perfect summary. Like you just don't assume. And what you do is you just agree. Thank you for letting me know. I say that's it. Somebody I run into that people in wheelchairs that run into a lot. They're either people baby them, or like they completely ignore them. So there's no in between, and it's just rare. Like if don't let a door slam in the face of a person who is wheelchair bound. Just don't do that. Yeah. It's just a funny thing. It's just a funny thing that people try to make concessions. They try to make accommodations, and they go over too high or too low. It's very funny.
That's a good point. Wow, man, that's a great point, man. Once again, talking to our guest today, Kristof Morrow. You can go follow him on Instagram and TikTok, and also go ahead and get that book, The Second Son, Volumes 1 and 2. It's on Amazon right now. Before we let you go, I know we went a little over, but this was a great conversation. What would you want for our listeners to do? Obviously, get your books, but what would you want them to do to continue to support you?
Well, I guess the way that I priced my book, in terms of financially, I priced my book so that it's only 99 cents. It's the cheapest that I could possibly make it in every country, or every Amazon market that's available. And then I priced the paperback also in the same way, and consistent with that, as low as I could possibly do it. And then, but the hardcover is the version that's I sell, I think, for $39, and I make like $13 per book, I think, and that's the way that generally other people have been doing it. But that's really it.
Well, once again, man, thank you for taking time to talk to us today, and hopefully you keep doing your thing, keep writing, man.
Oh, thank you.